We have our beautiful mismatched cups, all different patterns and prints. And I remember having an argument with my husband. Obviously, first cafe, had no idea what we were doing. So he's just like, no one's going to care. Like everyone's going to notice, like those small little details. But to me, it's so much of those small details that really set us apart from anywhere else. If it's something beautiful, you're going to stop, you're going to admire it, you're going to remember it.
Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we have conversations about power, value, and success on your own terms. I'm talking with women who are building influence, wealth, and authority, not by following someone else's playbook, but by deciding what success looks like for themselves. These are candid conversations, hard-earned perspectives, and no BS insight from women who aren't asking permission. They're setting the standard. I'm your host, Jennifer Justice. Most people call me JJ. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Today, we have Elisa Marshall. She is the Chief Brand Officer and co-founder of Maman. And I am sure you've spent a ton of money at her cafes all around New York City. If you've ever been here, they're not only delicious, but they're gorgeous. So thank you for being on. Hi, Elisa. How are
Thank you
you?
for having me.
Tell us a little bit about why you started this company and when.
So I started back in 2014, and it really started kind of selfishly as a personal passion project. I was in the fashion industry, I was in the event industry, I had a catering company on the side, I was wearing 20 different hats, doing a little bit of everything. And I just couldn't find that job that kind of checked all of the boxes and that I was super excited to wake up to every morning and that I loved to do. And ultimately, I had entrepreneurship instilled in me at a young age. Both of my parents were entrepreneurs.
Oh,
And
they were. Can't wait. Talk
yeah.
a little bit about that, and let's go back to your story. It's like we both have kids, so it's like what influences them is like so interesting, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, my father had he had multiple businesses as well. He had his own business growing up in the steel company. Then he had a little antique shop on the side. He was doing a multitude of different things. So he kind of instilled the passion and the drive of entrepreneurship in me at a very young age. And my love of antiques and vintage things, which I had zero appreciation for then and has come full circle because I of course love them now if anyone comes into any of my shops or my home. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom with a bunch of side hustles. She had a catering company. She was an incredible cook and, cooking and baking for local families in the neighborhood right out of our kitchen. So it was just working for someone else wasn't really an option for me. It was always something you need to build something for yourself. And they really instilled that very young. I remember my first company I started was when I was probably 12. I was making binders out of old denim and selling them at local fairs. I started a very lucrative eBay business, actually, when eBay first started back like late 90s, early 2000s. I was selling and flipping things on eBay and just getting checks in the mail weekly to, lemonade stands and bake sales and everything. So I always knew that was going to be the route for me in the end.
How long were you in a corporate environment working for other people?
Oh, I would say for about 10 years. But while doing that, I always had side hustles. So, I had my 9 to 5, which was paying the bills. And then I was very interested in wedding planning. So I started interning there and I started a little company. I loved baking. And so I had a small cupcake catering company on the side, loved interior design. So I picked up a few projects from a variety of friends and people who I knew where I could help them do that. And it just kind of got to the point where I was doing small bits of everything. And I'm like, I need to find one thing to commit my time and effort and energies to. And, that job just didn't exist that checked all the boxes. So I knew it was something that I had to invent. So selfishly, where Mama came to be was really ultimately, me kind of like looking at all the passions and everything I wanted to do. And I love baking. I love design. I love florals. I loved events. I loved bringing people together around a table. I loved hospitality. And ultimately, that's exactly what we do and exactly what we are today. And I kind of had every girl's cliche dream of opening that cafe that's beautiful and, an event space. And we started very small. Ben, my husband now, boyfriend at the time, back in 2014, started very small in New York City. We found a beautiful it was an old gallery actually in Soho. put all of our blood, sweat, and tears and hand painted the walls and sanded every chair and made our tiny little dream space with
Where
every
was that
intention.
exactly in
So
Soho?
it was in Soho on Center Street between
Oh,
Grand and Broome.
yep.
And not much was going on around then. We met a fantastic landlord, which is a rare thing to say in New York City, who believed in us, took a chance on us, and he helped us. Yeah, we opened up our one what was supposed to be a tiny cute little cafe where I was baking at night and making coffee in the morning and my husband was working the cash in the morning and cooking at night. Neither of us are professionally trained chefs. We're both mom trained chefs, we like to call ourselves.
Yeah. Where'd you come up
And
with the name? Why that name?
so just that, we ended up brainstorming and trying to think of a name. And we were talking about the food and the dishes we were going to serve. And we kept saying, my mom has this recipe and my mom taught me this. And we're like, that's it. For those of you who don't know, maman means mother in French. So my husband is French. He's from the south of France. So it was kind of a little nod to the French culture. And we felt it was something that really embraced our goal of what we wanted to do with Maman was really creating that like home away from home, that home environment. And I think a lot of times people often associate the word mom with food, home, whether it be some of the best meals you've had or some of the worst meals you've had. Oftentimes it's related to food in the kitchen. So we just felt like it was one word that meant something very important to us, but then also something that could resonate with others as well.
So I remember going there. I want to say it's probably 2015, 2016, and meeting Audrey Gelman, who then founded the Wing. And I can't even remember why we were meeting. It was maybe to invest in the Wing. I can't even remember. But then that area started to become like little France, right?
It's funny, we were one of the first ones there. There was the wine bar there at the time as well. And then, French clothing brands came, Le Coucou French School came, a variety of different French companies just kind of all came on that street. And we did a petition and we realized there was no Little France in New York and we were able to turn it into Little France.
Oh my God, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
you guys started the whole area basically. Yeah.
Well, yes, us and the neighbors. It was a combination.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. So that's 2014 when it first opens, right?
Yes, correct.
And then now they're all over. How many do you have now?
Correct. So as of yesterday, 51.
What do you mean as of yesterday? What did
We
you
opened Brickell Bay yesterday. Yeah.
so, and what states are they in? How many are in New York City?
New York, we have about 23, and then we have many in the surrounding
Yeah.
boroughs as well in New York.
That's incredible. That's like 10 years, 51
Yeah,
stores.
exactly.
And did you do this all bootstrapped or have you raised money?
No, so originally we bootstrapped until about the sixth or seventh location. We bootstrapped. And then following that, pre COVID, we actually ended up raising. So we were very fortunate to, have the private equity firm join on during COVID. And from there, we basically had an influx of money. We had so many leases, so many availabilities. It was a great opportunity for us. And I think COVID, though it was so trying for so many, it was actually a pivotal point in our growth and expansion for us because we found that we just raised money pre-COVID. There were so many restaurants and cafes and landlords who are desperate. People walked out, left food in the fridge, handed out their keys. And so we were able to pick up about 14 leases at the time. And then all of a sudden, post COVID, whenever you define that as, it was very intense. And it was like, okay, now we need to figure out how to open restaurants. So the first like 6 we bootstrapped. And then from there, we had to hire a lot more people, become much more corporate and really kind of get the ball rolling from there.
So what was that experience like for you? We hear all so many nightmare stories about private equity and VC and raising money. How did that resonate with you?
It was definitely scary, I think was like the biggest word to go into it. I think like, especially because Maman was something that was so personal to us. I was very fortunate to have my only partner be my husband. So everything was decided between the two of us. We bounced off ideas with one another. We both had a very distinct vision, and we didn't kind of want someone else coming in saying, "Oh, I don't like your blue and white plates," or "I think we should change the flowers." And ultimately, they didn't do that. Those were my fears, was that someone was going to come in and like overstep our vision, overstep our brand. We were very fortunate that the partners that we did have really helped us where we needed help, which was financially, and putting structure in place as well, and really helping us scale and grow, which was something obviously we had no, apart from going from 1 to 5, from going to the next level, we didn't really have any experience. And so it was definitely a scary process. It's like hiring a nanny for your children, and you're going to have someone who's going to be in your home and raising your kids and maybe having different views and different principles and stories. So it wasn't easy, but we're very fortunate. They have been incredible partners for us and continue to be, and really help us where we need help, not overstepping, knowing what our strengths are. We know very well what their strengths are. And it's been a great partnership.
And did you know that going in, or was that something that you came to realize? Like, I suppose one of the things that I hear a lot on this podcast is there's a certain instinct and intuition, right, that goes along with it. You're the chief brand officer, right? So what's
Yeah.
different a lot about Mama is that you get actual like mugs and they're beautiful, you know what I mean? And plates and they're really beautiful. And you would think somebody would come in and be like, that's too expensive. Let's change
And
all this
that was
out.
that was my fear. I'm like, I still need to handpick every single vintage piece in all of the stores. I don't care how many we have. We're not getting one SKU. We're not standardizing our plates and our dishes and not having vintage pieces in the stores. And that was my fear. And it was definitely a risk, because when signing up with any partner, it's like having a boyfriend. You never know if they're going to turn one day, and if what they told you on the first date isn't actually true in the end. But, I think we were lucky. It was something I was very nervous about. So really intended to ask the right questions. And then I also think it was important to really find partners who skill sets are ultimately within your needs. So if it's really more financial driven, finding someone who is a little bit more finance oriented. Whereas if it's from a scalability standpoint, which is, to be transparent, like where we're at now, it's like, what's next? How do we grow from 50 stores to 100 stores? It's not necessarily the finances we need at this point. Now it's like the expertise. Now we need the help. We need the personnel. I want someone who can take this to the next level, who can help build the brand, who has experience rolling out multiple doors and creating larger brand impact. So I think it's really important to kind of identify the specific needs when having a partner and making sure that those strengths shine, because anytime you bring in a partner throughout the trajectory of the business, it's ultimately for different reasons and you have different needs.
I mean, luck is part of it, yes, as you said, but,
Yeah.
asking the right questions and not feeling intimidated to ask the right questions is such a big deal, in particular in that kind of world, which is so male oriented, and for you to be like, "No, I need these." So all of your plates are vintage? Like, you source them from where?
So
All over? Yeah.
combination of vintage and reproduction. And everything is mismatched. It's all an assortment of, mismatched china. It's funny because we've been oftentimes told we need to standardize this and it's too expensive, but it's something that I love doing. There's nothing I love more than like vintage shopping and antiquing on weekends and going to garage sales and going to flea markets. And like, I still buy up like 5 or 6 plates every single time I can, because it's what fuels me.
And it's a
And
business expense, so lucky
oh, it
you.
is. It is. And it's a big one, because unfortunately they're not restaurant quality and they break faster than we can buy them. And we have a
Yes.
lot of theft as well, which is
Yeah.
also, we do sell them for anyone who's interested. Uh, so, it's really finding those little details and things that are important to the brand and important to me personally, that I want to, hang on to and won't let go of.
So in these first, 6 stores that you were doing, did you ever doubt yourself on the brand and what you could do to, make it more cost efficient, et cetera? Your cafes are unique and very identifiable, right? And that brand across all of it, I think that's what everybody tries to do, right?
And that's been the biggest challenge, is just kind of like creating that consistency, and also taking the authenticity of the first one, where I mentioned before, I hand sanded every chair to have that perfect distressed patina and we whitewashed all of the walls and we bought all different mismatched vintage plates. So, like, exactly that. So, how do you take that scale and that time and effort and energy that goes into it and turn that into 50? So, definitely along the way, it's been a challenge for myself, specifically on like, what's give and take. And, I think the chairs are a perfect example. So when you look at our first location, I handpicked 24 seats. It was all beautiful, mismatched vintage chairs, which is something that I had around my dining room table growing up. Actually, that was my father made a huge, beautiful barnwood table. And we had 14 different mismatched chairs around it. And so that's like a little nod to my family heritage, but that's not scalable. And it also isn't practical. And I remember being in there on a busy brunch Sunday, and a bigger gentleman came into the restaurant and he sat down and all four legs just fell out. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, we're going to get a lawsuit. This is the word. And thank God he was so nice, but he got up and he's like, I'm okay. I'm all right. And I'm like, okay, so maybe we have to rethink this vintage chair thing. So, it's been a matter of finding what we can make scalable. So, now I have a reference of restaurant quality, not as cute as the vintage ones. They're fine. We can buy them in bulk and I don't have to spend hours searching for them, but like doing that give and take. So, we do have our standard tables and chairs now as we have grown, but then we always make sure to incorporate some beautiful vintage pieces. So it'll be our cabinets, our hutches, our displays, our display counters, to really still have that vibe and that feel, because it's not as practical. The first one I was trying to recreate my home. When you have thousands of New Yorkers coming in and out every day, it's not as practical for commercial businesses.
And how about, each one, they all look really beautiful and the same, but like, how do you create the same vibe? You know what I mean? From the people who work there. That is
Yeah.
like something that's so interesting to me always, and when people have like a retail store or a cafe or a restaurant, it's like creating that kind of dynamic. Like when you go to Disneyland or Disney World, like everyone has to go to school. They have to be part of the college, to actually work there and understand. And I just read something about Target, like their new thing is if somebody's within 10 feet of you, you have to say hello. And like if they're even closer, you have to be like, can I help you? And I've noticed it in the local one in Tribeca, but to keep that in particular in these times when things are not as positive and uplifting, like how do you
Absolutely.
preserve that?
Really has so much to do with building a good team and kind of, counseling the staff to have that same eye, same attention to detail, and same vision. I think from an aesthetic standpoint, for consistency around the stores, again, as mentioned, we have like specific touch points. So I do make sure that though it's standardized, no store is cookie cutter. We always have different unique vintage elements. We'll always have the floral trees. We have blue and white printed coffee machines, blue and white tiles, all the mismatched china. So there are a handful of design elements that we keep throughout all locations that help to kind of create that consistency in that brand environment. But so much of it for me, it's kind of answering beyond what you asked, is really about creating that multisensory experience for our customers. And I always say that, to my staff, and something I challenge myself on every day, is there's so much good food surrounding us in every neighborhood that we're in. In New York City, there's 5 places in Tribeca right beside us that have fantastic coffee and fantastic food. Why are you coming to Mama? Why are you coming to see us? And that's my challenge. And that's my question. I literally wake up and that's what motivates me to do what I do every day, is like answering that why and making sure that we are living up to that and being creative and keeping that innovative as well. Because today you can't just be good food and good drink because we're spoiled, and we can get that a lot of places. So I really put so much of my emphasis on what's surrounding that. So as you mentioned, the customer service, to me, that's so important. I would always instill that all of my customers, remember, if you see a face twice, you get their name, you get their coffee order. You start making it when you see that girl walking in. She has her Americano with a splash of oat milk every morning at 8 on her way to work. Have it ready before she even orders it. So those tiny little details, and really kind of thinking beyond the typical service operational element. So it's not only the ambiance that we're creating, it's the customer service, it's the smells within the space, it's the activations, and also what we do in the community. So kind of like taking it out for myself. The thought of becoming a chain makes me cringe because like I just hate that word. I feel like a Subway or a Starbucks or like on the paper and the books, fantastic. We would love to be that. Operationally, we would love that too. But from a customer standpoint, we put so much thought and intention into building Maman and really kind of creating that local, warm, cozy cafe. That's, what we try and do at each and every location. So, really being involved in the communities that we're in to make us feel like a local coffee shop and to not make it feel like another big chain and another restaurant from New York City has come in. Working with the local schools in the neighborhood, doing everything from I just did a fundraiser last week for one of the local schools, and we have programs set up where if you wear, your school uniform, you get a free croissant between the hours of 3 and 6, and hosting bake sales and hosting kids' cookie workshops and hosting birthday parties. So, kind of creating that really community oriented feeling. And we have kind of local marketing positions in each location whose goals are really just that, like find who are our neighbors, who is the building across the street, and like let's host a neighborhood meetup for everyone who lives in the high rise across the street from us. So what we can do above and beyond to really make it feel like a warm and welcoming space, a small one-off local family run cafe.
Look, that's amazing, especially because you're competing with the Starbucks on every corner as well. And like you said, I mean, the one in Tribeca, there's River Hill on one side and there's a Starbucks on another. So to be able to like make sure and you choose that. So I can hear all the things that you've done right and I can hear it. So give us some real dirt. Like what are the things that you feel like you've done wrong or you wish you would have done better or known when you'd entered into this?
Yeah. Oh, I could write a book. Many things are done wrong, and I feel like every location there's definitely screw ups, and even on this one that we just did yesterday, it's funny. I just kind of like wrote my report of like, okay, here are elements that we need to change and that we need to focus on. I think grows too quickly is something that really hurt us. I think as a company financially, me personally, physically, exhaustion for my team, wearing people down. So I think kind of taking on more than you can chew. I'm very much a yes person and will say yes to any opportunity and then figure it out. So I've really had to kind of pull in the reins on that and question question my optimism and saying yes to too many things because I have such an outlook that you can do everything, and especially in the transition of my career and becoming a mom as well. That's also been a big personal shift for me on figuring out priorities. And that's a whole other podcast and
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, seriously.
um
Just tell me somebody who's figured it out and like.
yeah, I'm like, please, I exactly every day still looking for help there. But I think in like biting off more than we could chew. And now we actually had a chaos month where for construction purposes, permit purposes, we nicely space out all of our openings. And we have had 3 openings in the past month, not to mention Art Basel, which opened today. We're doing a huge pop-up there. So it's just been like a chaotic week. And it's really so much more planning. I think building a strong team around you and burnout. Ultimately, I think for us, for our team, that's my biggest fear and something that I personally experienced as well. Not over promising things to yourself and knowing that you can only do so much and your team can only do so much as well.
That's so true. Hopefully that wasn't the worst advice you've ever received is to do it all. But like we'll save that one for later.
It is, but I gave that advice to myself. So
Well, I have to do it all the time.
I'm
And
superwoman. I could do everything.
yeah,
Obviously.
and I'm type A. Also, you're creative. So a lot of things, on the business side could probably be paralyzing too, which, and then you're like,
Absolutely.
but no, I have to forgive myself all the time. I'm a single mom by choice. I have 2 kids. I run a business. It's like, and I beat myself up for not getting stuff done. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like what I do in a week, most people couldn't do in a day. I mean, when I do in a day, most people can do in a week. So it's like, I, have to forgive myself all the time. But I mean, and that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So learning that you can't do anything, everything is part of it too. And as women too, we try to do it all because we're like, oh, we don't want to put anybody out. We can do it. We can handle
Oh,
it.
that's the thing, and asking for help too. And I think that leads to a great point because that's one thing, especially early on, it's like I wore every hat. I was the baker, I was the barista, I was interior designer, I was greeter at the door, hostess, bussing, dishwashing. It's just like you did everything. Really realizing like I can't do this, I can't sustain this, and I need help. I still am the type of person that for me, it's like it's easier for me to just do it myself than it is for me to like take the time to explain it to you. And you're not going to do it exactly how I want it, anyways. I'm going to end up redoing it in the end. So I'm just going to do it. And I have to kind of let go of that mentality and saying, like, okay, you might not do it exactly how I will. And it might be at 95%, but that's okay. And I need to be okay with that because I can't do everything. It's accepting help, it's asking for help. And that's, really been a huge challenge and something I still face myself with every day.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I just ask myself, what's the best use of my time? And if I can give somebody else some work that they're better at it, let's do that. Giving other women in particular work, supporting their livelihood is so important and literally what we're all about. So, I mean,
Important.
that's a big part of it as well. I'm with you. We'll start our own support group one day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I love what you mentioned that they're better at, and that because that's another great point and something that I had to really do as a personal and physical exercise is like really identify and write down all of the things that I'm not good at. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's so easy to find your strengths, to highlight your strengths. And I'm great at this and I can do this and think that you can do everything. But saying like, hey, I really suck at this, or I can't keep up with TikTok these days. And some 20-year-old out there is going to be 100 times better than me. So it's like, why am I even bothering? And let's find someone else who can take this, own it, and shine and is going to be amazing at it. So I think it's really so much of, yes, you think you can do everything and you're great at everything, but it's like, what am I not really great at?
no, and I think it's a good way to turn it around to be like, it's an opportunity to give somebody else the work that they're really good at and to shine,
Absolutely.
as well as financially, right? Like, so it's one thing I tell myself when I know that I can't do something well. It's like, I'm so happy I can't do Excel sheets.
Oh, for sure. And that's why I have a co-founder. Thank God. I give so much credit to female solo entrepreneurs who are doing this on their own and really doing everything because I knew off the bat, like, I am not the math girl. I am not the numbers girl. Like, that was something that like I owned from the get-go. And thank God my husband wears all those hats and he is fantastic in that. So I'm made for a really great partnership there.
Yeah, no, for sure. But you do still sound like you know enough on what's going on that side, which I think is super important too. Instead of like,
Absolutely.
because before it's like husbands and wives, like, I don't want to talk about the money. That's icky. And then we all know the horror story where it's like the husband dies and they have no money, or,
For sure.
they get a divorce and didn't know he had 17 different other bank accounts, all of those things. So it's so important too to
Your eyes on it, but not not deep dive.
just like he shouldn't be thinking about your vintage plates all the time and the brand and making sure that the atmosphere, et cetera. But that kind of balance is so important between any kind of co-founders, and like an emphasis on that is like really important. So when we were asking about how many stores you have now, you have 51 because you have New York obviously is big. And what other states you're in? Florida?
So New York and kind of like the tri-state area, so between Connecticut, Jersey, and surrounding and growing in ultimately there. DMV, we opened up. So DC, Virginia, Maryland. We have two in Canada, where I'm from. So one in Toronto and one in Montreal. Florida has been our most recent large expansion. So we have 11 locations in South Florida. And then we opened up Dallas last week. So that's kind of our first new market that we're entering, which is very exciting. And Charlotte to come, a few others in the works behind the scenes. We have about 15 more on the pipeline for next year so far.
That's amazing. And then after Canada, are you thinking internationally as well? Or
We're really focusing on the US right
yeah.
now. We're opportunistic to going international. We are not franchised right now. Like we're all independently owned within the US. We have been approached by some franchise partners for international, which we're loosely entertaining. It's a different beast, it's a different market, a different world. And like we were just chatting about, it's something that we don't have the expertise in. We're kind of internally talking, saying, like, maybe it is going to be better to have someone else take this and run it and own it in a different market where we just don't have the experience or knowledge in. So right now we're really focused primarily like North America. But you never know if something amazing comes knocking at the door. As I said, I'm unfortunately a yes person. So
It's not necessarily a bad thing unless,
never say never. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So with the private equity company that you partnered with, did they have experience in this kind of expansion in like retail stores and cafes, et cetera, restaurants?
Yeah, so they're definitely focused primarily in the hospitality industry. So they really did have experience in growth of small units, taking them to larger chains, restaurants.
Right, because it's pretty unusual for private equity to get involved in a company of your size, for a private equity company to get involved at that particular time, you know what I'm saying? Or am I
Yeah.
wrong? Or, what?
No, and we were no, we were very fortunate to meet them and they've been our partners for the last 8 years now. So it's been great to have them along for this ride, and I think we have been a great partner of theirs as well, and something that they didn't necessarily have specific expertise in, definitely in the hospitality and restaurant industry, but not in terms of like the vast growth that we have had with them. So it's all to say I think it's been a win-win and a great partnership for us both.
Wow. Yeah, 51 is a lot. Soon to be. So 2026, how many are you opening then?
We have about 15 slated. Again, always opportunistic. Sometimes there's great, second generation restaurants that come along. Oftentimes we get calls saying, "Hey, I have this restaurant. It's not really working out. It's a fantastic location. Would you be interested in taking it over?" So that's really how we found quite a few of our locations organically and not necessarily sorting them out. They sometimes come to us.
Your one in Tribeca, wasn't it with Paper Source or something at first too?
So, yeah, so our Tribeca location was our second location or third location actually that we opened, second in New York City. And when we first opened there, it was a very, very large space. Soho, our first one, was very small. It was a 20-seater in the back and really heavily focused on a lot of events, was a huge part of our business model then. And I just needed a bigger space. Everyone had a bridal shower, a baby shower, a birthday party, and wanted to like sit 30 people. And so we actually lived in Tribeca. And on our route from our home to our Soho location, every morning when we would walk by that Tribeca location on 211 West Broadway. And it used to be a wine bar and it was always empty, never saw anyone in there. And then one day we literally saw the agent put the sign up and it was a beautiful location, long, skinny, had gorgeous brick walls and just so much charm, fantastic neighborhood. And I remember as he was putting up the sign, we like walked in and stopped and started talking to him. And a few months later, it was ours. We really kind of had the intention of dividing it and doing the cafe in the front with more of a full sit down restaurant in the back. I think our intention with Soho was really to kind of create that more, grab and go, not a lot of seating. But we found we just created such a beautiful, like warm space. Everyone wanted to stay and no one wanted to leave. So it's like we needed to have more seats from a restaurant standpoint and from an event standpoint. So that's kind of where Tribeca came from. And then we realized after opening Tribeca, we just kind of bit off more than we could chew. And it was really too big, took way too much square footage. Rent and sales just didn't compute. And we were doing a lot of pop ups there. So we found kind of a cool way to really engage the community. And we were kind of like subleasing and hosting all these pop ups within the front cafe space because we had so much space in the back for customers to sit and dine and stay that the front had beautiful, store footage. We had great traffic of people coming in and out, grabbing their to-go pastries and coffee. And so we had everything from flower shops to jewelry to clothing. And we would kind of host these really fun little multiple week pop-ups in the front of the store. And it was really such a win-win partnership for us. It, helped financially to take some of the rent for these smaller brands. It was a great way, especially when some of them are e-commerce, to give them that retail experience that they ultimately couldn't have had on their own, and also to guarantee them traffic because we already had that. We already had a defined clientele of women 25 to 40 coming in on a daily basis. So it was a great opportunity for so many of those brands who came in and did pop-ups with us and were very successful because all of a sudden their website just kind of came to reality and they had a storefront space within New York and had a constant flow of traffic of their customer to begin with. And then we kind of saw that and thought maybe this is something we can do on a full-time, more permanent basis. We had a great relationship with the team from Paper Source. We knew the CEO well, and the Soho location was closing down and they were looking for a new location. And so we kind of said, hey, you know what? Like we share the same customer. We entertained that and we went with it. And so we ultimately kind of took that pop up concept and we subleased the front half of our Tribeca location to them. It was fantastic. It was great for a few years. It was coming in, you can grab a coffee, you grab a card. You always need like those little gifty items and those impulse purchases. Unfortunately, they had uh, acquisition from Barnes and Nobles. There was a restructure in the business. Things changed, and we also changed. And we're like, we want to have our own identity back. And I think now looking at it, it wasn't a mistake. It was definitely, a great advantage for us both. It was great from a brand standpoint. But I think in Tribeca, the neighborhood became very competitive as well. And a lot of people forgot that we were there and didn't even realize that we were there because we gave them the front half of the store. So sometimes when people are like, oh, you're in Tribeca, I've lived in Tribeca for like the past like 3 years. Didn't even know you were there. And I'm like, oh, because you look in a window front and you see a paper store and we're all the way in the back. So about a month ago, we actually just completely did a full renovation of the space. We took back the space with Paper Source. And now we have our baby back, which is so exciting. So we have our beautiful big cafe grab and go in the front. And then we have full dining and event space in the back. We expanded our kitchen. And also, the reasoning behind this wasn't just for that, but this was our second store. And we've done 50 since then. And we screwed up so much. Like the layout of the kitchen, the design, the functionality, the flow. It's like these are things that we learned over time. So now, in addition to opening new stores, we're also going backwards and we are redoing all of the messes that we made to begin with when we didn't actually know what we were doing. In Soho, I
That's
remember.
fine.
Right,
That's
absolutely. And it's been 10 years. They're all in need of a refresh anyways. So it's been fun to kind of like rewind the clock and learn from so many of those logistical and building mistakes and go back and fix those.
I think the great story out of that is that you were nimble in knowing that, like, okay, we have the same customer. People ask me all the time, about partnerships and who they should partner with and what they should be thinking about. Instead of just like whoever comes to you, it's like, let's be really thoughtful about it. And at that time, that really worked for you. And that
Absolutely.
was a really great thing about it. Afterwards, you're like, okay, these are the things that maybe we should have thought about in the end, but that's just it. It's like a learning experience, right? It's always about the journey. No one's ever perfect. And like, ultimately, it was a better win than it was, in the end. And like, now people know, we all know you're here in Tribeca and it's great, so I love that story. And I think it's really great for the listeners to understand. It's like, when you're young and scrappy, do things that don't seem like normal or that everybody else is doing
For
to
sure.
like to get some customer acquisition, because getting those customers is really expensive. And if you can do it in a natural, authentic way, it's great.
Absolutely. And Papers has brought us so many customers as well that we never had. I spoke to it like it was a one-way relationship, but I think the added value of having them there. And of course, you go in to buy a gift to grab something. Yeah, you're going to grab a coffee, you're going to grab a cookie. It's like, it's just such a great win win for both of us.
That's awesome. All right. So we have to close this up because you are very busy. But the one question we ask everyone, obviously, at the end of this podcast is, what is the worst advice you've ever received?
So the worst advice I ever received was don't sweat the small stuff. And from multiple people,
To a brand person, a creative. Yeah.
right, to exactly, and that was advice, like, right from the beginning, from day one, even from the conception. I was so focused on, like, what so many would think would be, like, the useless detail. Our cups, I think, is a perfect example. So, we have our beautiful mismatched cups, all different patterns and prints, and I remember having an argument with my husband when we first opened. Obviously, first cafe, had no idea what we were doing, quantities, huge expenses for everything. And I was so adamant about having these gorgeous printed cups. And I wanted 4 different patterns and I wanted different patterns for each size. And to make sure that if someone gets 2 copies, they get 2 different patterns and they all had to work together, but they all had to be perfectly mismatched. And obviously there's a cost to that. And when you're opening and there's minimums, and I remember our first run of cups, I think it was like 50,000 minimum per style, per size, and they couldn't split it over different prints. So he's just like, no one's going to care. Like everyone's going to notice, like those small little details. He's like, this doesn't work. You are eating out of these cups for the rest of your life and you are drinking out of these cups for the rest of your life. We're using these boxes as like making furniture out of them because we started the company with so many cups because I was so adamant about this. And thank God we've gone through thousands and thousands of more since. But to me, it's so much of those small details that really set us apart from anywhere else, to the flowers, to the mismatched china and place settings that we have. And I think that even the staff sometimes who don't quite get it or don't understand get so frustrated with me because I get so mad when they use a matching cup and a matching saucer. And I'm like, no, you have to use a different saucer with the teacup that you put on it and make sure you choose the cute little mismatching spoon. For me, when we started, Instagram wasn't even a thing back in 2014. It's like you forget what that world was before Instagram, but it was nothing. For us, it was such a huge part of our success and growth because we were giving people reasons to take pictures of everything. If you had a plain white cup, you got your coffee from Maman, it said Maman on it. Great, you're going to drink it, you're going to enjoy it and throw it in the garbage. I'm like, but if it's something beautiful, you're going to stop, you're going to admire it, you're going to remember it, you're going to take a picture of it. Hopefully you're going to share that picture. Other people are going to notice it. And it's that neurotic attention to detail that I have that stems from my wedding planning experience that to me is so important. And I think though it drives my staff and my team absolutely bonkers, it's becomes so much part of like the soul and the integrity to our brand. And so I do sweat the small stuff and I'm going to continue sweating the small stuff. I'm going to fight for the small stuff for as long as I can. And that's what makes us unique and stand out. And people notice.
And for those of you who stole some of those small stuff, ideas, like,
Karma will come
you
and get
are. Oh my God, I love it. You know what? You should be flattered. If it's worth stealing, then you've done something right.
That's true. Exactly. I know you have to kind of flip it as a compliment. Like, I guess if it was ugly, they wouldn't steal it, but it's just really cute. So,
Okay, so if people want to find a location, how do they do that?
so online on our website, it's mamanyc.com, MAMANNYC.com. And that's also our Instagram.
Coming to your neighborhood soon, it sounds.
Exactly.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. Until next time, I'm Jennifer Justice. Thanks to MedJet for supporting the Taking Care of Lady Business podcast. When you travel for work or internationally, the real question isn't if something could happen, it's whether you've planned for it. That's why I'm a member of MedJet and have been for years. If your security is threatened or you're hospitalized while traveling, MedJet can get you home and to the hospital you choose, not just the closest one. It's not travel insurance. It's about not leaving critical decisions to chance. If you travel regularly, it's worth having in place. You can learn more at medjet.com. Thanks for tuning in to Taking Care of Lady Business. If this was useful, subscribe and share with a friend. Make sure to check out the show notes for more on my guest and me, Jennifer Justice. Taking Care of Lady Business is a production of Lady Business LLC. See you next time.